Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the problem with problem solving, which will be a fun conversation. It's about shifting paradigms, which is a pretty standard conversation or a frequent conversation that we engage in. It's foundational, really, to pretty much everything we talk about. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, energizing all your cells and your molecules and your electrons, and lighting you up from the inside out, creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation and the tickling, the tingling, and allow that sensation to bring you present into your body right here, right now, to this remarkable physical form that allows you to experience life. And welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. And today's topic is the problem with problem solving. So one of the things that we were talking about yesterday was prayer, and how lots of times the prayers that we, the entreaties that we present in our prayers are kind of an affirmation, confirmation, reinforcement for the thing that we're praying to end. And that's the same dynamic at play with problem solving. So when we talk about problem solving, we're focusing on something that isn't working, or that we're interpreting as something that isn't working. And we tend to focus on that thing. And by focusing on that thing, what we are constraining our concept or our conceptualization to the boundaries of our understanding of that thing. And so when we view something as a problem, we're isolating it and we're affirming it with problem solving, right? And by its very definition, problem solving is constrained to a specific problem. So if it's constrained to that specific problem, in some respect, it's going to perpetuate the paradigm, at least, from which that problem emerged. And so when we have the opportunity to step back and look at the bigger picture and the system from whence that quote unquote problem emerged, we get to reconceptualize. And this is the essence of this conversation, is that in identifying the problem, that's when we identify something as a problem, that in itself is limited in scope, rather than looking at those things as a natural function of a greater system. And then we get to look at the greater system to be able to reach a richer understanding that might give us an indication of an acupuncture point, so to speak, where we can intervene to shift the whole dynamic that generated that consequence or that circumstance. So, good morning, Lisa. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. And Rosalind says, feeling like there's something off, misidentifying, and solving from a place that is not the origin of the root cause. Exactly. And what we are talking about is our tendency to oversimplify, our tendency to kind of try to isolate things, a reductionist view, really, of how things work. So we're looking to, like if somebody's having heart issues, we're going to prescribe medication or some kind of medical intervention to deal with the heart, right? Without looking at the greater system to see what are the interactions of the system, to understand that, and then in understanding that, look at what will invigorate the entire system. And it's a whole different way of thinking that is redirected toward possibility rather than problem. And I think that this is also what we were talking about yesterday when we were talking about inviting, I think it was yesterday, inviting a light. And when we're in the darkness, we're trying to maybe alleviate that darkness. We're trying to maybe remove the things that are dark, when instead, if we have a shift of paradigm, moving from the darkness into the experience of the light or the invitation of the light, that's a shift of paradigm. And that's really what we're looking at, is creating an entirely new context for how we can interact with systems and experiences. So this notion of problem solving is something that creates or is part of an illusion of definitions, paradigms, boundaries that are perpetuating the problem, right? Like if we're defining something as a problem, what we're doing is we're staying, or we're existing in the realm of thought that enables that problem to exist as a problem. When we can look at something that we might be considering a problem, if we look at it instead as, again, I said earlier, a natural function of a system, like a natural outcome, then we get to look at the system more completely to say, okay, so what are the possibilities here? What's available to us in understanding? How can we move to a whole new place of awareness and perception that by its very nature transforms the system such that what we were perceiving as a problem doesn't even exist anymore. It's not that we had to treat the problem. It's just that it ceases to exist because we have created a whole new dynamic. Does that make sense? So I'm looking at places where we can see this in our own individual lives. I think in relationships, right? If we have a problem relationship, you know, I'm wrestling through something like this now, and looking at how to be able to shift the context, to shift the paradigm from which I'm perceiving a situation with some family members, and how in shifting that I can create new openings, new possibilities. And the challenge here is that we're fish in water. And what I mean by that is that when we're immersed in our environment, we were talking about this yesterday also when we were talking about inviting light, that the first step is to be able to step out of the experience of the darkness enough to recognize that you're in the dark, and then invite the light, right? So being a fish in water is we're so immersed in our experience that we're not aware of that fact, that we're in this created experience, and that we have the opportunity to create it differently. So it's challenging or it can be challenging to find a way to step beyond the limits of our perception, our immediate perception, to conceive of something new, something that is beyond the problem, so to speak. So I know that all of us have experienced challenging relationships or challenges in relationships. And the question is, how do we come to a place of possibility without just trying to address the immediate problem, question, in air quotes again. So from now on, as I say problem, you get to know the air quotes are there. So I just want to say, if you guys are wanting to be engaged in the conversation, please go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or the Enlightened World Network YouTube channel to enter your comments. And if you're entering comments and I'm not responding, it's simply because I don't see them. So please don't feel ignored. And so back to this idea, when we have relationships that are challenging, if we can step back and get ourselves kind of out of the picture, to be able to step back and see this bigger dynamic, we might be able to better see a place of intervention, like an acupuncture point that's going to impact the whole system. And it goes back to the Einstein quote, is that you can't solve a problem from the level of consciousness in which it emerged. So we get to stand back. This is like the key to negotiation, is to stand back to broader and broader perspectives, to a place where there is some alignment, right? Alignment with each other. And so maybe the place, well, it just occurred to me, and it's not genius, to come back to this very big space of love and connection. And so when we see a problem, by definition, that problem is defined by separation, because that thing is separated from whatever the surrounding dynamics are, right? But if we come up to a higher level, particularly in the context of relationship, and maybe even in pretty much any context. But if we go into that bigger space of love and connection and look at how we might interact with this dynamic, all of a sudden everything shifts and our priorities shift, and the way that we're going to interact are different than saying, this interaction between us was not acceptable or was really hurtful. And, that's pitting us against one another, rather than finding that place of connection and coming from that down into the potential dynamics of a system. So what we're doing is we're shifting from a problem mindset to a mindset of possibility. And they're kind of polarity. There's a polarized relationship in a way. If you're doing a solution to a problem, you're focused on what's not working, versus possibility, which is focusing on what could be created, what's available, what can we generate. So one is constrictive and the other is generative. And so Rosalind says, inventory solutions based on a place from love. What is the more loving option, even if it's not your preferred choice? So again, I love what you're saying, Rosalind. And when we talk about solutions, what are solutions? Solutions are typically solutions to problems, right? And so what we want to do is actually move the whole conversation into a different dimension. In other words, we want to have a quantum shift in our perception of the dynamic that enables us then to be focusing on possibility and generative possibilities, rather than trying. A solution implies problem, right? We have a problem, we have a solution. And what I'm endeavoring to address here, and it's sticky because we're so solution oriented, we're so problem oriented, that this conversation about shifting into a mindset of possibility is a real challenge. So when we look at a problem as feedback, what we have previously looked at as a problem, if we look at it as feedback, then we can start recognizing or gaining some inroads into the dynamics. If it's a problem, it needs to be fixed. If it's a function of a whole, then it's giving us some inroads into a greater connection with and understanding of that whole. I'm hoping this makes sense. It's so many times the things we call subtle are really profound and dramatic. Good morning, Elaine. Welcome. We're glad to have you here with us. We're talking about the problem with problem solving and moving from problem solving to discovery of possibility, and that it is a completely different orientation and therefore generates completely different engagements with circumstance, that we're moving from the notion of solutions to possibilities. And also the notion of a solution is that it's over and done. And, we have a problem, fix it. Okay, you fixed it. And now it's done. Now it's not going to come back. Whereas the idea of possibility is generative. It's part of a living system. Like it's not, things aren't once and done. We're all part of these systems of many moving parts. And as we gain greater insight into the system, we have the ability perhaps to better perceive where there are those points, acupuncture points of intervention that open up whole new worlds. So Elaine says, I don't have problems. I live a life of infinite possibilities. Exactly. And that's what we're endeavoring to do here, is to get to the root of that mind shift, that experiential shift, that paradigm shift, moving into recognition and awareness of the infinite possibilities that are present all the time. And Rosalind says, so moving from solutions-oriented, projecting consequences into a mindset of possibilities. Exactly. So moving to the exploring options. How do we explore options if there's already a preference? Observing patterns, reading, research. So I think the idea here is to be stepping the first step in moving to possibilities is recognizing that to be shifting from the notion of problem as problem to what we're perceiving as a problem to feedback. So when we start recognizing that thing that we're perceiving as a problem or undesired is something that is a function of a living system. I think that's the other thing that's really at the crux of this conversation is problem is sort of static. It's sort of fixed. This is an ongoing problem. It's fixed in its beingness, and it's being identified and isolated from its greater context. And so when we instead recognize things as dynamics and systems that are evolving and changing and shifting and have a life of their own, then we can better engage with the possibilities of those systems and to recognize, like here, the water is coursing in this direction and it's being fed from here and it's being fed to there. Good morning, Isabel. Welcome. And what we notice is that because this water is coursing this way, this whole area is barren and dry, and the fish are dying, and the trees around it are dying, and the animals are becoming less diverse in species. And if there were just this intervention here, like if this stick were placed in this position at this particular acupuncture point, the water would flow differently. It would fertilize these areas. It would bring back moisture so the trees could grow, the animals would come back, et cetera, et cetera. So a perfect example, I think, is the wolves being reintroduced to Yellowstone Park. And there's a really beautiful short documentary about what was it called? How wolves change ecosystems, or something along that line. You might try and check it out. It's spectacular. So there have been many movements to cull wolves in national parks, for example. And what they found was when they reintroduced the wolves to, I believe it was Yellowstone, what happened was that the whole ecosystem, how wolves change the course of rivers or change rivers. So the whole ecosystem shifted profoundly because now this natural predator, the wolves, eliminated a lot of the deer that were overgrazing and eating the saplings or the sprouts of saplings. So more trees grew and more underbrush grew, and because there were more trees and more underbrush, more animals came back. And then as more animals came back, the ground became fertile. The bears started coming back more. It just fed down the line to where everything changed. And because there were more trees growing, the boundaries of the river were sturdier, and so the river actually became more rich and robust and actually changed course. And all of this was traceable to the reintroduction of the wolves. So the wolves became the acupuncture point to shift the entire system, rather than saying, hey, the river's drying out, so let's put a dam, or let's redirect some other waterway. Instead, looking at this whole system to recognize, there's an acupuncture point here that can transform everything. And so that's an example of what I'm trying to address in this conversation. So Lisa says, I had to step away. My schedule has been crazy and I keep missing you, my dear friend. I added dear by mistake there, but I feel that you're a dear friend, Lisa. Thank you so much. We're glad to have you back. Lisa says, that's been an amazing thing to watch. The wolves are doing well. No, if the human factor stays away, they'll thrive. So nature has a way of correcting or adjusting or adapting or modifying that is so far beyond our conception, but there is a deep, deep, deep complexity to systems. And by addressing a problem in isolation, we're ignoring that complexity rather than honoring it. So I think that's it for this morning. And maybe we can entertain what it looks like to move beyond problem solving to focusing our attention on possibilities and connection and our involvement in these grander systems. So Lisa says, I believe several of the original wolves were hunted. It's just, I don't understand the preoccupation with trying to eradicate wolves. It's abominable to me. Anyway, on that note, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network's channels, Enlightened World Living, EWN, One with the Earth. And Lisa says, you definitely enlighten my mornings. Much love. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you. And I can say the same for you guys. You bring so much joy and light, and I'm so grateful. Elaine says, when one remembers who they are, living a simplistic and empty state, one will always have and know what is needed in the now. A life beyond the mind. Wolves live beyond the mind. They live by their instincts. Humans are part of nature, but have forgotten who they really are. Exactly. We have seen ourselves in opposition to nature rather than part of it. We've seen ourselves as dominators or even stewards rather than part of nature. And there's a radical paradigm shift available for all of us there. So, anyway, so much love to you. Until next time, I hope to see you again here really, really soon. So much love.